Hey, what is going on, everybody? Boilon here, back for another video on Marvel Strike Force. What are we here to talk about today? Well, a lot of people have been asking me what my thoughts are on the Purple ISO event store, also priorities for purchasing in the event store, and just in general, what we're here to expect going forward with Dark Dimension 8. Now, I've broken down the math on exactly how much ions that you're going to need, how many crystals you're going to need, and what's that really going to cost in the grand scheme of things. So I want to cover as much as possible in today's video and kind of let you guys know what I'm going to be up to. And no, I am not equipping my characters with purple ISO at this point in time. However, if I wanted to, of course, I could give Ultimus or some other brawler level 1. We're going to be talking about that too, because brawlers make up some of the most important characters and the most amount of characters you're probably going to be upgrading for Dark Dimension 8. But all that and more in today's video. So if you're ready to go, let's boil this down. So the first thing that I actually want to talk about is the leaderboard of the radioactive, or not the leaderboard, the ranking payouts for the radioactive prep. This is a lot. So I'm just going to tell you this right now, that to put this into perspective, and yes, I understand these are Kraken, leaderboards, but it's interesting because when you take a look, we'll take a look at the math, but this actually represents like a good 50%, maybe 60% even, of how much you need towards Dark Dimension 8. And so I find it weird that they're actually, at least in this leaderboard, maybe this is a one-time thing, and other leaderboards that's related to Purple ISO will not be anywhere near this, and this is like a one-time only thing. But it seems like they're being fairly generous in the grand scheme of things in terms of the payouts, because the total amount of crystals and ions that you need is not actually that high. And also, if you wanted to spend your treats on more ions, it's a 1-to-1 ratio, which is pretty good, all things considered. Now, currently, I'm ranked in I believe, the top 2,500. I hope I stay there, but we'll see. Either way, top 2,500 or top 5K, because I did hoard a lot of campaign energy for this event. Even for this, you're looking at over 1 million worth of currency, 800K plus 400K. So you could purchase this for a direct payout for ions, and that would get you 1.2 million ions. And then the associated orbs and the crystals related to that. I have the estimated value of each of these orbs as well. So as you get these along the milestones, I do not recommend opening them or using them at this point in time. I think there's still some unknown factors that we should consider. Mainly is that when Dark Dimension 8 comes out, we don't know if there's going to be some sort of payout return, right? Like Apocalypse did in a weird way, like on the nodes. Who knows? There might be like DD8 node rewards where you get some ions or some crystals back. Like, we just don't know. There's a lot of things. The only thing we do know is what characters we can use by the time that it goes live. We know nothing else really. And so I just wanted to cover that really quickly. And I kind of mentioned this spreadsheet before. This is what I would call, I've dubbed this my DD8 fantasy chart, and this just kind of represents like the main characters that I think that you'll probably end up using in Dark Dimension 8 if it were to be released now or even next patch, although we don't know what next patch's characters are necessarily, but it represents like the ones you're likely going to be bringing in now. Obviously, City Villain is Sinister Six and Hive Mind combination. You're probably going to want to look at something like this because those are the most realistic characters. And then when it comes to City Hero, you're going to be looking at Spider Society. I think at this point it's pretty plain. Like those are your best characters. And I do want to reiterate that it's very likely that when the Orcus raids come back, or sorry, when they come, that the higher difficulties are most likely going to require purple ISO. I highly doubt it's going to be at the start, but the higher difficulties probably will. And so I think it's a good idea to consider, anyways, that purple ISO might be required for your raid characters. And that's kind of where I might be considering double dipping, especially when it comes to Spider Society and Extreme X-Men and Global Hero. I think that just makes a lot of sense. I mean, probably not Cyclops, just because I don't know about that right now. And we're probably going to use Old Man Logan anyways, like we have been, instead of Cyclops. But there you go. Global Villain, Cabal, and some combination of characters, maybe like Apocalypse and Ares, that kind of thing. It's not really super important. But what is important is that, all of the characters that I've chosen as my sort of DD8 fantasy listing, we kind of came to the conclusion of how many classes per character there are. And overwhelmingly, there's more brawlers than any of the other characters. There's actually, for whatever reason, less controllers. And I've even included some of the characters from Annihilators for my Cosmic section. These are like my top 5 picks. You could include more Annihilators in this, in which case it would be slightly different. But by and large, like we're there's 8 brawlers in my top 25 choices. There's going to be 3 controllers. It could be 4, I suppose, if you swap somebody, maybe swap a brawler for gore, and then a protector. That doesn't even include gladiator, and that's still 5 protectors. It would be 6 actually if I swapped gladiator in for someone else. So brawlers and even maybe protectors, but then you have 5 blasters and 4 support. So what does this really mean? By and large, unless you're swapping out some of those brawler characters, which you very well could, there's going to be a lot more of those than the other classes. Why is this important? We're going to get back to some of the other stuff, but I want to tell you what I've been up to in my store. So I've been alternating at this point in time, but not alternating as such, but I've been kind of like balancing it a little bit between buying the purple T3 level 1 ions and brawler crystals. As far as which brawler crystals go, like I've been kind of balancing it out, making sure it's kind of even a little bit because I don't want to have too much of one stat than another one, especially since I'm paying currency for it. And why the ions? And I think to understand this, you really need to know how many ions you're actually going to need to eventually clear Dark Dimension 8. And what I do like about the ion purchases is that it's actually a 1-to-1, like I mentioned earlier on. So it's 1 treat to 1 ion, or in this case, spending 5,000 treats to buy 5,000 ions. I'm pretty sure there's a 10,000 variant in here as well. Some people have said maybe you should just hoard all of your treats until later. It is 45 days after all, but we're going to be getting treats every single week. Some of them may have very big bulk leaderboard payouts. At least this one is. And I don't want to get to the point where I'm like a week or 2 away and I have so many treats that I can't actually spend it. Because believe it or not, that could happen, right? Because like in theory, unless you're buying out everything, if you're being a little bit more selective, it's going to be a lot more challenging to spend, say, 1 million treats all within, like 5 days even because of the payout. So I don't want to have to core this store, which means that I am going to be spending it a little bit by little bit as we get it. And I expect them to show up every week as far as the events come. So let's take a look at the math numbers. I've broken this down. So total purple ions required to get to purple 3. Now, this is just for upgrading the class. So it's 74,800 for one character to go to purple 3 when you're leveling up the classes. Now, hopefully you have that set, at least the character classes that you want for that character. But it's 7,500 for purple 1, 22,300, weird number, for purple 2, and then 45K for purple 3. Times that by 25 and you get 1.87 million, which is the total ion cost to upgrade the classes to purple 3 for 25 characters. So that's not actually a lot in the grand scheme of things. What is, however, is the crystals. So there is ions required to craft or fuse the crystals from level 1 to level 3, and that's 57,000 per stat, which means you have to do this 5 times for one character. So it's going to be 285,000 for one character. Times that by 25, you get 7.125 million. Add that with this figure, you get about 9 million, rounded up, in terms of total ions required just for both upgrading the crystals and for leveling up the classes. Okay, so that's just one part, right? So the other interesting factor is the total crystals required. Now, obviously, you need 45 per character. That's 9 of each stat, or, times 5 for the 5 stats. So that's 45 crystals of that class for one character. Times that by 25, and you're getting about 1,125 total crystals. Now, what I did was I broke down how much would this cost if I were to buy it from the event store. Let's say we had a lot, right? And I could do that. Then that you could equate this to basically one crystal costing 5,400, and then you can just basically figure out that if you want to fully buy 45 crystals just with the event currency, it would cost 243,000 treats for one character. So that's kind of interesting, but obviously that costs more than if you were, because you like in total, essentially, let's just say hypothetically, you would need about 15 million treats, not ions, but treats to buy everything from the event store that you would need for Dark Dimension 8. Now, this is very unlikely to happen because during the events we're getting orbs as well, right? Like those credits to open up the orbs. And so this is not going to be the full figure. It'd be less than this, right? Because you're opening up the orbs, you're going to get crystals. And what's really important to understand is that the estimated value of one purple class orb. So just to show you, it would be these orbs in here, which are now in there. You can see them. These T3 class orbs. their estimated value is about 4 crystals per orb. Now, you get 2 guaranteed from the left and the right pillar. You get 1 of each stat. But in the center, there's a chance for a jackpot, but you're most likely going to be landing on actually 2. So there's guarantees 1 of, 2 of, 3 of, 5, 10 of. Actually goes from 3 to 10, and then from 10 to 25 of a single stat. Now, I only broke down like just the number of crystals that you could get is about 4 per orb, because you're more likely, obviously, you're more likely to get something bigger than 1 over here, and there's some odds of the jackpots. And when you do the math, it basically works out to about 4 crystals per orb. That means that if everything dropped perfectly, which obviously is not going to happen, you would probably need about 281 orbs. I would argue that it's like plus or minus 20% there. So, I mean, you're probably looking at more like 350 orbs, that kind of thing, to get the amount of crystals that you want. And even then, I don't know the math on that side of things. I just know that hypothetically, 281 orbs is what you would need total. And I think that's interesting when I think the top payouts in some of the leaderboards is more like, I believe it's like 100 or so orbs, which is quite a lot, all things considered. I just thought that they would want to milk the Krakens and the whales more. It feels like you only really need to do really well in like a couple of leaderboards, and you're like almost there to Dark Dimension 8. So I don't know what their intention is with this Odin DD8. It feels like it's not going to be as lengthy. I guess I'm just saying that now, right? And a lot of people aren't going to agree with me. But it feels like this is more of a pit stop and not a destination. It feels like we're on the road to Xavier and we have a pit truck. We have like a truck stop, and we're just kind of like, maybe we're waiting here for like a month or two, but it doesn't seem like as large of a destination as Mephisto in Dark Dimension 7 was, where it took, a reasonable amount of time to be able to get to the end of that, or to get it, for average players. And so I don't know what the length of time DD8 is going to be, but my gut feeling is it's not going to be as long as 7 was. I feel like, which is weird because I've heard rumors that Odin is going to be directly countering Mephisto. And without the G19 lock, apparently as well on DD8, then you might start seeing maybe people with Odin before Mephisto, and I find that a bit strange. But anyways, what is this all trying to? What am I trying to tell you? I'm trying to tell you that both that you should probably maybe do a DD8 fantasy list of your own, and kind of look at how many classes of the characters that you're choosing is, and that way it kind of guides you in terms of what you should be buying yourself out of the store. However, knowing that we need about 9 million ions just to upgrade everything, that is something that I'm deeply considering as well, because we're going to be getting crystals in events pretty much every week. Now, I may have shown this. Let me see if I brought it up in my data mines before. I'm going to bring it up again here. But when we looked at the Hank Pym event that's going to be next week, I've had a lot of data mines lately. But the Quantum Disco, I'm going to zoom in a touch here. It talks specifically about T3 support ISO orb fragments in the Hank Pym event. So Hank Pym is a support character, and what this tells me is that going forward in the character events, we're going to be rewarded. Whether I don't know whether that's contained within the leaderboard or the milestones. Is it free to play, potentially available? I don't know these things. Maybe it's not. But what we do know is that it seems that they're mirroring the characters. So Hank Pym is a support character. They're going to have purple support ISO stuff in the milestones. So that means with the Annihilator characters upcoming, Gladiator is a protector, Agor is a controller, I'm pretty sure, and Thanos is a brawler. So we might see those there as well. So that will give us other opportunities to be able to pick these things up. And so I think that the crystals might be less important knowing that, because when I was looking in here, like it also says T3 level 1 ions actually. So we'll have to see what it looks like for the Hank Pym one specifically. But knowing that we're going to need 9 million ions, and that we're also going to, if you ever want a class change in the future, you're going to need more of those too as well. I just feel like this is going to be more of a bottleneck at the start, because when it came to the blue ions, and this is what makes it different, because in the blue ions, in the blue orbs, they actually were contained within the class orb, whereas in the purple one, they are not. So if you look at one of these class orbs, they contained 15,000 blue ions on the right pillar, whereas you're not getting any ions from these class orbs up here. So I think that we're going to be a little bit more restricted when it comes to our ion accumulation than what we did in the blue side of things. But that's just my thoughts on this one initially. So that's what I'm going to be doing. That's my strategy. I'm going to be largely buying up ions. However, on the side, I will be eyeing up some brawler crystals as well. So that's going to be the end of this video, everyone. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. And if your strategy is different from mine, that's okay too. I just wanted to share my thoughts with you all because a lot of people have been asking me about that. So that's going to be the end of this video, everyone. And until next time, stay safe and healthy. And I'll see you all later. Boilon signing out.